So let's talk about what we are going to talk about today, which is The Secret to Successful Retreats by Gabby. But the question is always, who is the speaker? Who is Gabby? So a quick introduction to Gabby. She is the founder of Happy Seeker with a background in public relations, marketing, and hospitality. She specializes in creating transformative retreats and teaching others how to do the same thing. As a certified yoga teacher and sound therapist, Gabby has hosted 13 sold-out events in just the past 3.5 years. She is passionate about creating these retreats that are not only successful, but also leaves a lasting impact on all the participants. We just had a podcast with Gabby a couple of hours ago, and I can tell you she has a fascinating story. I think it's going to be super interesting for you guys as well to hear it. There are no excuses, and you are going to see why I'm saying that. And yes, I think that's about it. I'm not going to take more time here. Gabby, the stage is yours. The pressure is on. Blow us away. Looking forward to it.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm so excited to be sharing with all of you some of my passion. I'm Gabby. Like Adam said, I'm 26. I was born in Colombia, moved to Florida at age 6, and after that lived and grew up in Miami for a few years and then started traveling around 7 years ago. I started my business, Happy Seeker, 3.5 years ago, and it was sort of out of following my bliss and just listening to my intuition that I felt like this business was almost given to me on a silver platter. So it is my duty to teach you all and inspire you all that this is a very possible and attainable lifestyle and business, and it could be very lucrative. You can make anywhere from obviously $0 to $30,000 per retreat. So yeah, it's an evergreen business that the world definitely needs and will continue to need as technology gets bigger and more, everything's about technology. So human connection is just needed more and more as we all grow. I'll send the link to my video and you guys can all watch it a little later, but it pretty much just summarized what my retreats are about, which is leaving your comfort zone and really feeling that pure bliss and freedom that travel and community and connections can really make you feel. So I'll just start with the story of how it all started. So a few years ago, I graduated from college from Florida International University, like Adam said, with a degree in marketing and hospitality, and I was not ready to get a real big girl job yet. That was the last thing I wanted to do, and COVID hit. So I decided I would go and buy a one-way flight to Mexico for a few months. I had around $3,000 in my bank account, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go live, do whatever makes me happy for 3 months, and then I'll go back to the US and get a job and become a normal human. I went to school with a scholarship, so I felt like I really owed it to my scholarship to follow my path and use that degree for something. I also owed it to my family, as my family is from Colombia and they did everything in their power to bring me to the US and give me the American dream so I could then be, financially free, something that they didn't have the opportunity to have. So it's really important for me to get that real job and use my degree as a thank you to my family and scholarship. So I went to Mexico and I was like, I'm just gonna chill for a bit. And I completely fell in love with Mexico. It was on the western coast in a little town called Puerto Escondido. It's in the state of Oaxaca. And when I got there, I had never felt so free in my life. Like I had never been surrounded by so many foreigners, talking and having friends from around the world. I was surfing every day. I was going on boat trips for $8 to swim with dolphins, swim with whales. I'm pretty sure everyone in here is a traveler mostly, so I think we all know how travel makes us feel. And no one was wearing shoes, no one wore makeup. It was just completely different from what I was raised in the United States and Florida. And for the first time ever, I felt pure bliss. I was just in love with life. I was in love with everyone, all my best friends that I had met there. I had a family, and essentially, I started posting little casual TikToks. I didn't have a following. I just decided to start using my iPhone and post some what I eat in Mexico while I live here that's like $2 a day, or, you know, where am I staying that's like $6 dorm, and, you know, what do you do for fun, and just the fact that there is such thing as a hostel, because 3.5 years ago, I think travel industry wasn't as huge, so it was not a lot of people, at least from my hometown, knew what a hostel was. Like Americans, it's not in our culture to travel, so it was a very new thing. And I wanted to show people that it was so attainable and actually so much cheaper than people thought. So I started just posting about it, having fun with it. I got a few viral videos, and that led to around 10,000 followers in the first month. But honestly, that was just from like one video. I just continued to have fun, and then I got to a point like 4 months in, that I ran out of money and it was time to go back home. But I really didn't want to go back home. It made me so sad. I just didn't want to go to the US and get that real big girl job that I know I needed to get. And so I went into debt a little bit, $2,000, and then after that, I'm like, okay, now it's really time to leave. But I still wasn't ready. So I got this idea because by this time, I think I had around 15,000 followers, and I had just gotten a bunch of DMs on Instagram, like very casual, genuine girls my age were just DMing me like, you have such a beautiful life. Like, I want to go to where you are. I want to experience what you're doing. I want your lifestyle, which I'm sure a lot of us get, as we are so fortunate to be living in Bali and be living in these beautiful places. And I would just respond like, come. You can literally book a hostel, dorm bed next to me. Like, here's my hostel, buy a flight from Miami. It's only $100. Like, it's really not scary. It's super safe here. I would tell all these people this, and no one would come. And I was just shocked. Like, people would continue to DM me. So when it was time to leave, I was like, you know what? Why don't I just rent a house for like 2 weeks? And because I couldn't even afford at this point to pay my hostel any longer. So I was like, let me just rent a house, and I'll have these people that want to come live with me, that are DMing me, these strangers, come live with me in the house, and I'll just live for free for the 2 weeks. So I was in Mexico. I was born in Colombia, so I speak Spanish. I negotiated with some prices. I went to some houses. I chose the perfect one, the beautiful pool, 6-bedroom house. It was so different for me because I had been living in a hostel dorm with no AC, disgusting, like sweaty every day for 3 months, to now like an AC, my own room and a pool. It was just the craziest thing on earth for me back in the day. And yeah, I replied to some people, and I was like, all right, I think I'm gonna like host a little co-live. That's what I called it. A co-live, like, would you be interested in coming? I also posted it on my story, very casual, like a picture of me, a selfie, like this, nothing was professional about it. This was not a business. This was just me trying to stay in Mexico a few days longer. So I posted like, who would be interested coming to Mexico, living with like strangers from the internet for 2 weeks? And a lot of people were like, me, I want to come. And so I was like, okay, great. So I put a deposit down on this house in Mexico, invited the people. I got around 11 people to come. Most of them were American and they were females. And then I had 2 guys that I was living with at the time in my hostel come and join the group to just add to the mix, because we only had 1 guy that was actually coming from stranger land. So I wanted more guys. And then as well, they were from the UK and Spain, and I wanted to add that to the mix, because one of my favorite parts of traveling is that you get to literally live and be with people from all parts of the world. So I didn't want it just to be American, and that was just like very natural what I wanted. You fast forward, it was a 10-day experience. Everyone paid whatever they could afford. I was like, you can only afford 100, come the 10 days for 100. You can pay 500, I think I was charging for 10 days. Some people paid 500. I didn't make any money. It was never about making money. I didn't know this was a business. I was still gonna go back home, get my job, and proceed to be a normal human like my family and scholarship wanted me to be. And the 10 days were the most magical 10 days of my entire life. Like, I still think back to that day. I literally have goosebumps. Everything went perfect. Like, it was just, we all became a family, and we all became best friends. We were watching sunsets together. We were going out together, you know, swimming with dolphins, with whales, being in nature all day long. And all these people that came, I was really able to show them my lifestyle and my favorite places and why I love this town so much. So yeah, it went really well. I continued posting some stuff. Eventually I went home. So that was fun. That was cool. Now I have to get a real job. And COVID was still happening, so I decided to just get some other little jobs before my real job. And I continued posting on TikTok. And by now, I think I was around 40,000 followers. And I kept getting messages like, when are you doing your Mexico thing again? And I was like, what are you talking about? My Mexico thing. Like this, I wasn't gonna do it again. That was like a one-time thing. But I continued to get those messages and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. And so a year later, I opened up 12 spots in the same exact house. I was gonna do the same itinerary. I came back to my favorite town. And before actually opening applications, because I didn't realize like how many people would come or how many people would be interested. I just don't know. It was only 40,000 followers, which on TikTok can be quite easy to get from like one viral video. So you just never know. So I made some videos of like, want to come live in a random surf town with strangers, blah, 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 whatever. Some of them went viral, some of them didn't. I asked my friends to post around just very genuinely, and the applications hit and I got like 500 applications. So I was like, oh my God, this is so unfortunate considering I only have like 12 spots because there's only 6 bedrooms. So I can't even have more people come. And out of the 500, there was more than 12 that I had to say yes to because they were either someone that I knew or like a friend or a friend of a friend. So it would be awkward to be like, no, you can't come, you weren't chosen. So I was like, okay, no, I need to open up a second session. After my first 10-day, I'll do just another one, like back to back. And I opened that up, and of course, like if there's 500, it wasn't very hard to sell the next 12 spots. So my second session, I ended up getting another house, and that ended up being like 36 people that I hosted for my third retreat ever. But yeah, it just kept growing from there. And then after that, I continued my travels. I made some profit from that. It wasn't a lot. I think I made around $10,000 for the 2 retreats, which maybe sounds like a lot, but it was not for the work that I put into it, comparing myself to now that I make around 7 to like 14,000 per retreat. So after that, I continued. I went to Europe for the summer. I absolutely fell in love with this little island in Greece called Milos, and I was like, once again, it was that same itch. Like, I want to show people how cool travel can be, how attainable, how beautiful, and I was like, I have to do it here again. And then I did one in Milos, and now I've done 13. So after the one in Greece, I continued. I did 3 in Bali. I've done 2 in Colombia, I've done 1 in Croatia, and I did 1 again in Bali this year, and now I'm gonna do 1 in France. So it just keeps going to wherever I wanna live, to wherever I feel inspired enough to do something and share with my audience a certain experience. So that's kind of how everything started. It was a very, like I said, it feels like from outer spec, like when I look back, like it was given to me on a silver platter, and I'm very blessed and fortunate. But it was also like the fact that I listened to my intuition and really followed my bliss and just focused on what made me happy instead of what others wanted for me, because there was definitely other things that people wanted. So I'm gonna share my screen really quickly and start showing you guys a little PowerPoint that I got ready. Let me see. Here it is. Okay, is it being shared?
It's loading, yes.
Okay. How do I make this bigger? Perfect. Okay, The Secret to Successful Retreats by Gabby Riveros. So I just told you guys my little story, and I think the 3 main things that I really love sharing this story for is because A, you do not need a big following. I feel like a lot of people want to start into this industry and they think they need like an influential following. But at the end of the day, we are all so cool. Like what we all do is post content. We're traveling the world. The basic human usually doesn't get to experience a lot of what we are fortunate enough to experience. So you do not need a big following. I started with just 10,000 followers, and even if you don't have those 10,000 followers, a lot of the people that wanted to come at first, like I mentioned, were friends of friends or just people that I knew of from high school or college that were just following my journey, my personal journey on Instagram with like 1,000 followers at the time from nothing. Those were just from like high school. So you don't need a big following. That's not what it's about. And also you have to think, to host a retreat, you can host a retreat with only like 6 to 8 people. There's 7.8 billion people in the world. Like 6 is such a low number to start hosting with. So it's possible. The importance of doing what makes you happy. I hope that from the little story you kind of learned, like, there's so many other stuff I could have done. I could have gone back or I could have not gone to Mexico because I know what my family wanted for me. And many can say I should have gone and made that American dream that, they worked so hard for, but I didn't. And I just prioritized myself and my happiness first. And it definitely led me somewhere with a business and the lifestyle that I've always wanted and envisioned myself. And then, just trusting the universe and taking risks, believing in yourself. Fear is definitely always a thing in my life. Like I'm not fearless. I hate that word. It's just like you have to be brave. You have to put yourself out there. And if you fail, then the next one, you're just closer to succeeding. It's not that big of a deal. Okay. Okay. So the first thing we'll talk about is marketing and selling. So I already talked about the first point, which is we do not need to be influencers. All you need to do is be authentic and start sharing every step of the way. People want to see you succeed, especially if you share with them a lot of your lifestyle. How TikTok and Instagram works, which I'm sure a lot of you know, is those creators that you really love and care about, you feel like they're your friends. So you need to be doing that with everyone. You need to just be posting the bad things, the good things, the steps that it takes to get somewhere. If you're gonna go location scouting, post about your location scouting. Like, guys, do you like this house or this house? Or, should we do private rooms or rooms with 3 people? Like, keep people interacting with you, keep people helping you, and they're gonna feel special and they're gonna wanna be part of the next steps, and that'll also make them want to come on the retreat in general. But it's just to say, like, an influencer is just someone who inspires people. I feel like we all have the ability to inspire. I'm sure we've all inspired someone with our lifestyles. So just know we are all influencers, and you don't need the big following. And then some other obvious ones that I'll talk about that I've used in the past are ads. Facebook ads are good for marketing retreats. Using influencers, so having an influencer come for free that's in your exact niche is really good. Obviously, make sure they give you like their demographic and really make sure it's gonna fit you and your audience, but that's always a really good one. Using volunteers, so that's kind of similar to influencers for me. I'll have my friends or people of influence be volunteers, so they'll come for free, they'll help me, but they also then post about their experience, because who doesn't post about an experience when they're traveling? And then giveaways are a good one to get your word out. Just giving a spot for free and then having people tag 3 friends and post it on their story. So if you don't have a big audience and this ends up blowing up because it's an incredible retreat and they get to fly for free and do these all amazing things, now there might be like 500 eyes on you and what you do. So it's a good way. And then just trusting the universe and using your intuition. I feel like sometimes I just get random ideas from journaling or just sitting and asking, like, what can I possibly do to sell this last spot on my retreat? And just quieting the mind and, just trusting that something will come up. For theme and niche, sorry, got a little thirsty. Okay. So the first thing when it comes to having a theme or a niche is, who is your audience? Obviously, if you're here and you're interested in giving such experiences, you most likely have maybe not an audience yet, but something that you would like your audience to be. So whether it's like males that are wanting to be entrepreneurs, or females that are just starting to travel, whatever it is, you need to make sure you know who your audience is. That will help you get to your theme and niche. The second is solving a problem. That's super important. You want to be of value to people. So for me specifically, my first one, without knowing, I realized the problem was people were too scared to travel alone. They were too scared to just get to a country and show up and hope that it all goes well, even though the place is completely safe and everyone knows English at the airport, and the airport's only 5 minutes from the hostel, and that's all. Like, people are still scared. So the problem I was solving was that they would come, they would have this one girl waiting for them that was gonna like chat them and text them and help them with a taxi that's 5 minutes, and have an itinerary for them and have friends for them. Like, readily available, so they don't even have to be alone during their trip. So that's the problem that I was solving at one point, my first one ever. But I continue to progress, and each one of my retreats sometimes has different types of problems. Sometimes I do adventure ones, sometimes I do self-care and adventure, sometimes I do yoga. So obviously there's always a different type of problem, but this is super, super important, and for you just to know your own retreat. And then third, which kind of ties into the problem, is value. You should try and make it unique, because the reality is retreats are quite, the industry anyway, is quite concentrated at the moment, which is completely fine because retreats are evergreen and we need them, and everyone has a different unique way of presenting things. But it's important that you keep it unique, because if you just come out with a yoga retreat, there's like 70 million other yoga retreats. Like, it's just the truth. So for me, for example, I'm doing one, I like to create like a type of vibe experience for mine. So I'm having one that's yoga and self-care, which there's many yoga and self-care ones, but it's in France in a castle. So it's like you just need to make it unique in such sort of way, whether it's the type of experience that you want to curate, or you're putting two different industries together. So like, for example, I know this one girl, she is a financial advisor. So she wanted to start doing retreats in that, but she also really loves to do yoga. So she's gonna start doing financial advising and surf retreats. That's pretty freaking unique, but also a really badass experience. Like, I would love to go learn about both of those things versus just surfing or just financial advising on a retreat. Something really common like that I do is I add adventure to most of my retreats. So if it's a self-love one, I'll also add adventure. And most retreats at the moment, I would say, are only wellness. So I feel like it's nice to add a different sort of aspect to it. Okay. The next thing we'll talk about is location and venue. So first of all, there is like the literal city and town where you're gonna have the place. From experience, I've learned a lot. There's a lot of responsibility and liability involved when you're hosting retreats for people, because people can get hurt, things can happen to people, even like phone being stolen, which is not your fault at all, but it would be something that you'd most likely have to deal with anyway. So it's super important that you choose a location that is safe. And this is like a checklist I just go through every time. Like, when I really love a place and I'm traveling it, for example, like I was in Athens and I really loved it, but sometimes if it doesn't have every single one in this checklist, it's not that great to do it in. So just make sure it hits these things. So safe. If you want to make profit, or more profit than not, good currency exchange is definitely the way to go. Like, I can tell you 100% my European retreats, I might only make like $7,000, but if I have one in Colombia, I can make like $14,000. So it's a huge, huge difference, because if your audience is, willing to pay a certain price, they're gonna be willing to pay that certain price regardless of the place it's in. And also Asia, obviously very affordable for a lot of us. So that's a great place to do them, where there's Airbnbs for really cheap. Like, if I ever wanted to do one in the US, in Miami, I would just simply never do that, because I'd be having to charge like $5,000 to get any profit. So just stick to the good currency exchange. Another thing is, especially if you're gonna add any adventure or sort of touristy attractions, make sure it's a place that has a lot to do, and preferably free or nature excursions. So for example, I did one in Croatia, and Croatia is quite expensive for tourism, but it also has a lot of hikes and beautiful beaches. So a lot of my excursions were just walking to a specific beach, or paddle boarding, or just doing things that were cheaper than like actually going on tours or excursions hosted by others. You can kind of host your own excursions. And that ties into kind of the last one, which is you could do your own excursions if you've lived in that place and you know that place. So it's always better to pick somewhere that you love and have content in, so you can use that content to sell a specific retreat. For example, I'm having one in France in June, and I have no content of ever living in a castle, and that's kind of been harder to sell, because I can't even make videos of it, versus my Bali ones sell like this, because I always post about living in Bali. My audience knows I love Bali. I live here. I have that connection to Bali, and I just know everything about Bali not everything, but a lot more about Bali. So yeah, try and pick a place that you have a connection to, or if you have roots in Brazil or Greece or something, Colombia for me, it's always good to do that, to leverage for yourself. For the actual venue, I always do Airbnb. You could look at hotels, Facebook Marketplace, or even like in Mexico, I just went on a walk one day and like went to a bunch of the big houses and asked. You want to do all of it. And for Airbnb, something that I do is I find the places on Airbnb because it's just simply a good place to look for accommodation. But then I'll also chat them and be like, hey, can I go see it in person? And then I go in person and then I talk to, it's either staff or the actual owner of the house. If it's the staff, I'll ask for the owner's number. If it's the owner, that's your time to network and kind of try and negotiate and talk about it. Maybe talk about what you do. I know a lot of people in here are photographers or videographers, or can even give more to them to even get the price down even more. So that's definitely a thing. I always pay way, way less than what it says on Airbnb by just negotiating down in person, or leveraging, which I'll talk about this later, but locals or the local language. So in Colombia, I have family in Colombia. They speak Spanish. I have an American phone number with the +1 on WhatsApp. So whenever I want to rent a house in Mexico or Colombia, I do not text them. I ask my grandma to text from her Colombian number. And I know it sounds like a lot of steps, but it has saved me like thousands of dollars, because seeing that you're American or coming from a specific place is just gonna get you a higher price no matter what, than if they think you're a Colombian family with a lower income. That's just like one of the tricks that I've gotten. Just try a bunch of different ways and think outside of the box of how you can get that price to be lower. The venue checklist. Okay, when you go to these houses and start choosing where you're gonna have everyone live or be for the week or 10 days or whatever long you are doing your experience, there's a couple of things that I always like to make sure it has. One of them, it depends, but one of them for me is always a pool. I think it's so important. I feel like everyone just knows, like, water in the middle. It leaves for a place where community could be in the middle. Community space for me is, so my first retreat in Bali, actually that picture is from my first retreat in Bali. It was a beautiful, beautiful mansion. It was like 3 stories, like 3 pools, but actually it was too big, and there wasn't like a place where everyone was meeting up in the middle because there was 3 pools. So it's kind of important that there's like this concept of almost like a courtyard type of house, or just make sure that it's not too separated. Like that house with the 3 stories would have been perfect for like a month log co-living, because in that sense, people need their own space. But when you're just together for 7 days, you don't want to be so separated, unless that's the point of your retreat and maybe it's some like trauma and healing thing and you need people to have their own space to go journal and digest things. But really think about the type of architecture and like how the house is built. A shala, so if you plan on doing any type of exercise, yoga, make sure it exists, because there's a lot of Airbnbs, they're so beautiful, but there's literally no space to do yoga or like move your body, and most likely you will need a space like that. Enough dinner chairs is a huge thing. You do not want to have 18 people pay $1,500 to come on this experience, and then every single day during dinner, like 5 of them are sitting on the ground. That's so weird and unprofessional. So make sure there's enough chairs. That's like a huge thing, and a lot of Airbnbs sometimes don't. So, and if they don't, just be like, oh, is it, I might have 4 extra people. Is it possible to get 4 extra chairs? And they might be able to work that out for you, but just make sure there's enough chairs. And just for everyone to like chill in general, if there's ever a time where, you need to discuss something like we are right now, and everyone has enough room to sit. Another one is 2 beds in 1 room is always gonna make you way more profit if there's just 1 bed in rooms, because that means 1 person can be in this room or a couple, versus if there's 2 beds in the rooms, you can put strangers in a room together. I always do that. It's never a problem, and you can almost double your profit doing that. And there are a lot of Airbnbs that do not have 2 beds in a room. So that's like something you really need to look into, and because it makes the biggest difference. If you can have 8 people or 16 people, is like that is like $7,000 in profit. Staff I have found like so helpful. That's more of a Bali thing. But I've had a ton of retreats with no staff because you just rent an Airbnb in places like Colombia, Greece, and it doesn't come with chefs in the morning or anything. And that's just another thing that you have to take care of yourself. When you're organizing, marketing, and hosting retreats, it's so many things. The last thing you want to take care of is if like a girl's allergic to mango and the mango juice is in front of her. So if there is staff to take care of that, it's so much better. Also cleaners, that is so helpful. I've hosted retreats and I've had my volunteers, like friends that came for free, help me with cleaning. It never works out the way staff would. So if there's an Airbnb or two that you're kind of like on the fence about and one of them has staff, always choose that one. It's gonna make your life so much easier if there's breakfast included. A lot of Airbnbs sometimes have breakfast included or hotels. That is amazing. It will save you so much. It's a thing you can offer and a thing you won't have to worry about. And also usually that comes with like the cleaning of dishes. For like 18 people, that's a lot to think of. So yeah, staff is great, quiet. It depends like what type of retreat you're doing, but there's a lot of big mansions on the road where maybe there's a lot of traffic walking by. It might be the perfect mansion, but if there's gonna be traffic all day long and you're literally hosting meditations, might not be the winner because it's gonna be really distracting. So that's just like another thing to think about. AC, I've been on a retreat where there was no AC and a lot of people complained. A lot of like Westerners or like people from the US are not used to not having AC. So that's something that you need to know about your audience. It depends where your audience is from. But definitely always put whether there's AC or not. I've been through this. When I had the 2 houses at a time for one retreat in Mexico, one had AC and the other didn't. And it was a huge problem. There's people like, oh, I don't understand why I don't have AC. So always put AC or like no AC. You just don't want people to come and not know what they're getting themselves into. And then location in relation to other businesses is huge. This also depends on the type of experience that you're gonna have. If this is gonna be a very, like self-development retreat and you're not gonna be leaving the house a lot, it's cool if it's in the middle of nowhere. That's perfect. Like my one in France is in a castle. It's in the middle of nowhere, but it's fine. There's so much room. We're gonna, do yoga. Everything about the experience is in the castle. It's fine. But then I've done in Colombia like a month-long co-live, and every time, there's 16 of us, we want to go somewhere, it's calling 5 different taxis to arrive at the same time. Like it would have been so much easier if I had just picked a house that was walking distance to even just one restaurant or one thing. So yeah, location in relation to other businesses. It also leaves a lot of freedom to you. So I've had locations in Mexico, for example, that were houses that were really close to everything. So if someone needed to go get a Pedialyte because they were hungover or something in the morning, or they need nausea medication, they're just gonna walk themselves to the little 7-Eleven that's 3 minutes away and do it. If there's not a 7-Eleven 3 minutes away, they're gonna actually text you instead. So and like every single task when you're hosting is a task, like they all add up. So it's always cool to have locations nearby, it'll help you. And then, yeah, I kind of talked about this already, but negotiating will make a huge difference in your expenses, obviously. So speaking a language or leveraging locals, which I said, maybe if you're friends with someone, if you're gonna do it in Bali, and you have a Balinese friend that is able to help you and you can tip them, and they can be the ones to text and negotiate houses for you, like they can make income from it. You're still gonna get it cheaper from them than if you try with your American or German or European number. And collaborations, I also said this, but if you can offer something in exchange, so these big mansions, a lot of the time they're new and they don't have much content of people hosting retreats or hosting these things. And you're most likely already going to get content of your retreat. So even putting it in there, like you don't even have to ask for a better price, but just like, oh, I'm also gonna have like 10 people here doing yoga and workshops and I'll send you all the content. And you could use it for marketing, blah, blah, blah. Like people are usually gonna be nicer or maybe give you free breakfast or something. I just always try to be as resourceful as possible to make sure my profit is as most as can be without like hurting any experience or making it less pleasant. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we answer maybe some of the questions that we
Sure.
have?
Let's do
Okay,
some questions.
awesome. So there's like so many different kinds, but maybe just to stay on topic, how long in advance do you decide the place?
Yeah. You shouldn't take this advice from me. I mean, in general, the more time you have, the better. That's just like science, because you just have more time to sell. I usually do, in the past I've done 2 months, 3 months, a month even, but that's just because I'm crazy. The longer the better. That's how I can answer. The more, too long is obviously a bit more, but like a year I think is a good time to book, and then you can start marketing once you've booked, and once you have that place and you put that money and deposit down, I feel like you have a need and a motivation to sell this retreat out or just start posting about it. So I think a year. Yeah.
Okay. Well, people plan ahead.
Yeah.
What's the average price point of your retreats?
Right now, it's from $1,200 to $1,500, and these are for 7 to 10 day retreats.
Perfect. Are we going to be talking a bit about promotion and marketing at a later stage, or?
We sort of already talked about some of it. If there's a specific question, I can go in.
Okay, cool. How much time do you give yourself for promoting, advertising, or just getting the word out there?
Yeah, once again, it's like anywhere from a month to 3 months for me, but I don't recommend that. I recommend the longer the better. If you could start posting a year in advance, 6 months in advance, also using time frames such as Christmas or when people are home for the holidays and are kind of able to plan around family and friends, it's always a good time to start posting. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Someone is also asking about your business model. Do you feel comfortable sharing that?
Yeah, sure. Depends. Yeah, I don't mind. It's just what's my business model, or what is it?
Yeah, what is your main business model?
I honestly, I wish I could answer you, but I have a really, not authentic, it's a really natural approach to business. I think I just do what works. I do what I think my audience is gonna love, and like I do what's working in that moment. And, I make sure I'm happy doing it. If I'm not, or if it's making me anxious, I just sort of reroute myself to something else. That's honestly as much as a business model as I have been having up until this point.
And there's also another question still about the price. Does that include VAT? You said $1,500.
Does it include what?
VAT, value-added tax.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Cool. I think we can carry on, and I think more questions are going to come in.
Okay. Okay. So our next topic is going to be building the itinerary for the retreat or experience that you will all be hosting one day or possibly interested in. So I think the first thing is knowing that when you build this itinerary, it's a rough draft, and keep it as that. And because you need to realize that flexibility is everything when it comes to these type of experiences. Especially when you've never hosted before, you don't realize that sometimes if you did, I don't know, maybe some like trauma type of thing at night, and then the next morning everyone ends up being so exhausted, they need extra sleep, and you had another like really intense workshop in the morning. Just be really open to being super flexible and changing stuff up in your itinerary, because I've been in so many situations where I get so stressed that I have to change something, but at the end of the day, no one knows your itinerary and no one knows that you had to change it. Yes, of course, sometimes I do like a rough draft itinerary and tell my customers that come on my retreat, like, this is what it's gonna be, but everything is subject to change depending on moods, depending on weather, and depending on just how everything goes. So just be super open to the flexibility, because you just never know with the amount of people that sometimes you may be hosting and things that you just simply cannot control. Maybe someone getting hurt, someone getting sick, someone getting food poisoning. Just be super open about that. When I build my itineraries, so for example, when I got to Bali, before building my itinerary, I went through like all TikToks, a bunch of guides. I even bought some on Pinterest of the top tourist attractions to do in Bali, and I went to everything. You know, I went to this one and this one and this one. I was like, okay, this whitewater rafting, I don't like it. I think for a group of 18, we wouldn't really be together because it's only like 4 people per little boat. But maybe, you know, for you it can work. But it's just like I would go to every single one and put myself in their shoes. Another thing, and look out for certain things, like if it might be a little too dangerous or there's just more risk involved, it's almost better to just not do it for liability and responsibility reasons. So for example, one of the things that I did when doing all the attractions is I went to this waterfall with some cliff jumping. And it was my favorite thing ever. I had the best time, but I just realized it would not be a smart decision to take a group of 16 people there because someone could fall, someone could, you know, get bitten by dengue fever because it's like in the mountains, by dengue mosquito, whatever. Someone could jump in wrong because it's quite tall cliffs. So just make sure you try every single thing out. And when you are trying these things out, so you're going to the ATV place, you're doing the silver jewelry making and all this stuff, network with the owners of the places. Tell them, be like, hey, I might be like hosting 14 people in a few months, or, you know, I'm bringing a family of 18 to Bali, you know, can I get your phone number and we can maybe talk about a special pricing for a group. So I always do that. I network with people, and also when you network with such businesses, they can point you to other businesses that do other cool experiences in Bali. So yeah, I definitely leverage on that a lot. Another point when building the itinerary is knowing that having moments of rest and mental digestion is really important. I've overpacked my itineraries to the point where they just feel like a fever dream and it's just too quick. And by the end of the retreat, people are so tired that they need a vacation from a retreat, which, I mean, that's an experience in itself, and it's fine, and people had so much fun. But just think about that. Sometimes, like if you have a beautiful villa with a beautiful pool, it's cool to just have a day where they could chill at the villa and just get to know each other. Like the itinerary does not need to be go every second. People will usually be happy and okay with chilling for some mornings or for some nights. They enjoy, I mean, especially if they're coming from like working 9 to 5s and they have this 10-day time to just chill. It's nice to have the time to just tan and do nothing. So definitely allow them some time for rest and digestion, a balanced mix. Make sure, for example, if you're doing something as intense or as trauma or healing, that you have something to change or brighten the mood up in between the different sessions. Or like I said, sometimes I like to mix self-care and adventure. So we'll have a day where it's yoga and ceremony and meditation, but then the next day we'll go on a hike and swim with dolphins. It's always good to have a good balance between different types of activities, whether some might be take more energy to do, some less. And always putting yourself in people's shoes when you're building the itinerary. So for example, if, you know, on Friday, the second day of the retreat, you're all going to an Italian dinner and there's alcohol at this dinner, so people might maybe have some wine glasses or, you know, a little bit to drink. Put yourself in their shoes. The next day, they might not want to wake up at 7 a.m. for yoga. After that, yes, but you need, you know, that might be the day where you let them sleep in and do late yoga or late breakfast. So put yourself in each of their shoes and really think about how they're going to feel after each activity and if it makes sense to do such activity after the other. The first and last activity is something really important also in an itinerary. I feel for the first, a lot of people that are coming sometimes can be nervous, they don't know anyone, or they might not know anyone, they can feel awkward. So it's always something good to do is to get them out of their bodies. So a lot of my first days are usually like a sunset and a volleyball match, or, you know, or maybe some drinks at like, or a coconut, something to sip on, something else to do than just like them arriving and like awkwardly sitting around a pool. And that can also be a thing, but it's also just better to be more intentional with that first activity, even doing maybe like a little game or a scavenger hunt, something that just gets them out of their mind. And then the last activity, it's super important to just end with a bang. So the last activity is what they're gonna remember the most from your retreat. So in Bali, I love swimming with the dolphins. I always think it's just such a magical experience. So the 4 retreats that I've done, I always do that around the end of the retreat. So it's just like how they're ending. You want it to be a celebrate. You want to celebrate that last day. So make sure it's good vibes. It's not super heavy and hard. It's just, you want something nice and light and fluffy so they remember that part. And then some pre and post activities that I want to talk about. So for pre, I like to do is just making WhatsApp groups with all of the people that are coming before. You can have them introduce themselves. You can ask them to any questions, put them in the group chat versus chatting you privately. That saves you time, but also a lot of people are like embarrassed to ask certain questions. They think it might be dumb, but when someone asks it, I get to answer for everyone. And yeah, and sometimes a little community is built even before the retreat. That's always super nice. For post activities, I also like to continue that WhatsApp group chat. I'll continue posting some stuff in there. If I ever love a video about some advice that it reminded me of the retreat family and that specific one, I'll send it in there. I'll really keep up with it, and sometimes you can even do Zoom calls to all meet up and have a little reunion. Just keep that community being built in there, because they obviously could also be potential customers for other retreats, and just because it's beautiful to do that. I guess are there any questions on this, on itinerary?
Not specifically on the itinerary, but
Okay.
there is something related to that, which was about how do you handle complaints? Let's say if people complain about the venue, the plan, and what they are going to do, what's your process there?
Yeah, I think for me it's super important to not take anything too personal when there's complaints, because you can never satisfy a group of everyone. It's just literally impossible, and I've learned it. There are people who don't like certain things, not because of the itinerary, but maybe because they might be in a space in their life where it's just not working for them. Obviously, you need to react in a very professional and nice way, and see how you can reroute it and help them feel better. But in general, I even remember this one girl asked me the other day, she's hosting a retreat and she just wants to know what times she should do breakfast, lunch, and dinner, because some people eat in the morning, but then what about the ones who don't eat breakfast and lunch and all this stuff? And I was like, you just can't satisfy everyone. There's no specific breakfast, lunch, and dinner schedule that I could possibly give you to make everyone happy. So it's almost just be confident in your decisions. If you know it's a great itinerary and most of the people are really, really enjoying it, you should be okay. But yeah, obviously give attention to that person if they need it. If someone, maybe doesn't feel safe doing something, or they have a specific complaint, bring it up and talk to them privately, I think would be better. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a couple of more questions, but they are related to general business, marketing, and also on the accommodation. So you can choose whether to answer them now or just later.
I'll just continue, and then, yeah. Okay, so for guests and customers, something that I like to do is before putting my retreat marketing videos, picture stories out, I like to describe my perfect client for this specific retreat. So I kind of create a little avatar. So I'll be my perfect one for my adventure Bali one would be a girl that's 22. Her name is Holly. She is so excited to come. She loves connecting with people. She's super sweet and bubbly. She's the life of the party. You want to even get specific. Because this will really help you pinpoint what type of people you want to attract and what type of people would make sense to even have at your retreat. So with the second point, vetting and applications, you do not want everyone and anyone at your retreat. One person alone can break your retreat or can make your retreat. And I say this from experience. There have been people who have ruined groups. And so it's really important, and this even ties into complaints, that people know what they are coming to. So a way that I vet my applicants is by asking questions. There's a lot of retreats out there that you literally could just sign up and pay. That's it. And then you get the money and you're good. don't do that, in my opinion. It's so much better to at least have like a 5-question thing where people could tell you like their name, where they're from, ages, very basic info, but then, you know, why do you want to come? Like, what is your reason? Where did you find this? And you can kind of get a sense of them. I also have them put in their social media. I don't go on their social media to like judge them. I just like to get a sense of what they are like as a person. And that has always helped me vet specific people. Obviously, to a degree, you can't help if someone's gonna come and they're completely different from what they're saying, but it's always good to let them know. Or if someone might say a specific thing to you on an application, or even questions. I've gotten like, are we gonna have like, I don't even remember the specific question, but it was a question this girl asked, and it was like, are we having private like chefs or something that was just like a little too bougie for what my retreats are, and I know that. And I was almost like, I don't think this one's for you. Like, wait for another more luxurious retreat from me. And I obviously said it in a very nice way, but you just don't want people that maybe aren't into what you're gonna do. Another example is I'm doing my retreat in France right now is not gonna be adventure. Zero adventure, it's literally just yoga, meditation, and a bunch of workshops and ceremonies. I have people that were interested in it, but are not into this yoga and healing. So they're gonna come and not be happy. They're gonna expect to go on these adventures that Happy Seeker, my company, usually does. So I would literally message each and every one of them, and I was like, hey, just so you know, this retreat's actually a little different than what my usual ones are. It's not gonna be adventure like most of them. We're not gonna be going out and doing itineraries every day. We're actually gonna be focusing on spirituality and healing. So it's just so important to make sure your audience knows what they are signing up for, so their satisfaction level is up and you don't have so many complaints or, you know, letting people down. And then getting to know them before the experience begins. This can be something as simple as a questionnaire. Just, they can tell you, are they a night or morning person? Do they snore at night? Like, it's literally little things. Even like re-asking the question, what is the most important goal for your retreat, for this experience? Like, you just want to get to know them, and even, you know, this is basic, but their allergies, their mental illnesses, are they on antidepressants, are they on pills? You need to know this type of stuff. It's really good to know them beforehand, because I've hosted retreats where I didn't know, and then I've had things come out as a surprise to me, and it is quite hard to navigate. So being prepared in that way helps. And even if you have the time, you could also go on calls with people, even like a 15-minute call before the retreat. There's a lot of people who are really nervous to come here, so just having like a one-to-one 15-minute can really help them just feel safer, more excited, and kind of feel like they have a friend when they're arriving. So yeah, getting to know them before. And it's also cool if, you know, like someone's specifically coming because they just went through a breakup, or, you know, people do open up to you when you're hosting and facilitating. Checking in on them during the retreat, like, hey, how are you doing with your breakup? Like, is everything okay? That makes them feel really special, and also obviously like they will be happier with the retreat outcome in general. Are there any specific questions about guests or customers?
So let's say that someone wants to come. So like there is someone that wants to come, but they're afraid of, they might be alone, they might not fit in. And especially when you do like a healing, let's say, no workshop, but like a retreat, a lot of people want to come there because they want to, you know, get rid of their anxiety and stuff like that. But this is the thing that, you know, holds them back. What if I go there and everyone looks at me weirdly? I don't fit in with everyone, and blah blah blah. Like, what would your approach be? As in, like, identifying these people, like who they are, that they are in the consideration phase. Let's say that they're considering, they want it, but they have some bottlenecks. Let's say that it keeps them, you know, behind of actually purchasing and come. Like, how would you find these people, who they are, and how would you know, approach them in a way that you know, direct them to the sale?
Yeah, well, for me, this is really common. This happens all the time, especially because I host for a lot of women as well. So not just anxiety, but a lot of women will express to me they're scared to even go to the airport alone, or like land in a country alone, just fears in general. And the way I do it that has worked for me is I'm very genuine. If someone expresses any type of fear to me, I will respond always with a voice memo. It's just easier for me and more personal, and I will just, this is literally what I say. I'm like, don't worry, like this is so common. You're not alone in this feeling. 99% of the people who come on my retreats are coming alone. 80% of them have never traveled ever. Most of them are making a huge leap and leaving their comfort zone because they want to get to that other side. I can promise you once you're here, like I will be so helpful in every part of the way. If you have any questions or anything that can alleviate you, like I will be here to answer that for you. Once you're here, there's not much to worry about. If you feel unsafe, if you feel this and this, just know Bali, this is how I would answer about Bali. Bali is considered a very safe place. You're always going to be surrounded by 18 other female girls that will empower you. Like I just answer with just a very genuine and authentic answer to that specific retreat. I take the time to answer everyone individually because I think it makes a huge difference. I've never tried the other way, not like just typing, and that probably would take a lot less time, but that's just my way of doing it, and it works. I've definitely convinced like hundreds of people to just go on it regardless of their fear. Just being a friend, I guess.
How old are your customers normally?
Yeah, I would say it's from like 18 to 30. Maybe that's when I started. Now it's more like 20. I like to keep it more 22 to like 32.
And do you try to keep it like in one retreat only like 5 years difference, or also the whole difference that you just
I've been
mentioned?
experimenting with both, and I think it depends on the retreat. But yeah, it just depends on like what are the type of stuff that you're teaching. But for my adventure one, I found it no issue to have a 30-year-old and a 20-year-old. I did, though, when the 30-year-old applied, tell her, hey, just so you know, you will be the oldest, but don't let that stop you from coming. But there will be, 20-year-olds, some 25-year-olds. Usually at my retreats, no one's asking how old people are. Like when we introduce themselves, it's usually like, why did we come here? Where are we from? So, and I'll even say like as a traveler, I'm always surrounded by people from all ages and walks of life, and it never stops me from being their friend. That's usually what I tell people, and people are either going to be like, okay, like maybe I'm going to go on one for, an older audience. Cool, perfect. Or maybe a lot of the time they're usually like, yeah, I'm like a kid at heart, like I still want to come, and I'm like, perfect. But if I hadn't said that, then they may show up and feel so uncomfortable that they're like surrounded by 20-year-olds. So it's just good to be truthful to people.
Cool. One more question about your customer avatar. Is it like that you think, okay, the girls which are now coming are like going still to university, or they're working in specific field? Is it like these concrete?
Yeah, I do
Okay.
really specific ones.
Yeah.
I think the more specific, the better.
Cool, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I may have missed this because I stepped out for a little bit, but do you have a process for figuring out if anyone has any like major medical issues, or like for like on the extreme end, something like an amputee or something? Like if you're doing an adventure style retreat, that might become a hindrance to everyone involved. Do you have a process for that, or?
Yeah, I mean, once people sign up for the literal retreat, they're a paying customer and they're coming. I send in a group chat a questionnaire that everyone has to answer before arriving, and there is a roommate questionnaire which has more specific questions towards like themselves and their sleeping. So like, do you snore? Are you loud? Are you a morning or night person? Like how do you describe yourself in 3 words? Like little stuff like that, so I can put people together that are similar to each other. And then I have my medical form, which obviously talk about allergies. Are you on any medications? Like, is there something you can't do? Any fears? Like, any traumas you need to let me know about. And it's definitely important to make sure you know this stuff, because it can throw a huge curveball at you if you don't.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so we will continue to costs and costs. So for the cost of the retreat, I think what you need to look at, I think a lot of people like, how much should I charge? The 3 things are your audience. So depending on your audience, this kind of goes into the avatar. If you've created an avatar, like me 3 years ago, of 18-year-olds who just graduated from high school, or like girls in college who just want to have fun and experience the world and travel for the first time, that is going to be a very different retreat cost than the 9-to-5 worker who wants a week off in their life to go experience, like a good little restfulness. So it's really good to look into your audience, even specific things like what does your audience do? What type of money does your audience make to come up with that number? Because you obviously want to make sure that they can afford it, so you actually have people come. When I starting putting my costs up, so I started, my first one I think was $500 for 10 days, which that was like, I didn't make money. My second was $700 for 10 days. My third was $800, then it was $1,000, it was like $1,200, $1,300, $1,400, $1,500. So I've realized that my audience has completely changed. I no longer have that many 18 to 22-year-old just graduated from college, like going on their gap year. Now it's more people that work and have an income. So yeah, know that your audience will change too if you change your cost, but it's important to take that into consideration. Your experience and your value, and I'm talking about your experience with hosting retreats. So maybe the first one you're not gonna off the top of the start, like start making $10,000 per retreat. That's okay. You don't have the experience of it yet. You've only hosted 0. So just don't get like over your head about it. I feel like, get that experience, and also that experience will give you confidence, and that confidence will give you, you'll feel more comfortable making your prices higher, and then the value that you're going to give people. So that's a huge thing. If, you may not have experience in hosting retreats, but you may have 10 years of experience in working with trauma. That's huge, huge value. So totally would understand if a week-long retreat is $3,000, because that's how much value you're giving to them. That could be a year's worth of therapy. So yeah, what you're giving to them. And then the third one is just to look at your competitors. This is like common knowledge, obviously, but you don't want to be completely out of the ballpark of it. If your competitors are all charging $1,000 and you're charging $2,000, good luck. I think you need to just make sure you do some research, and just at the end of the day, make sure you feel comfortable with that cost that you're gonna give to the retreat. I have, I've done retreats where I've made only $5,000 and that I didn't feel comfortable because I didn't feel it was worth it with the amount of energy and like time it takes me to put this on. So I had to change my cost of retreats to, reflect the value that I give myself. So just check in with yourself as well as your audience. Is there any question? Yeah.
Yes. So what would be your average profit margin on a participant? So let's say that if your costs would be $700 per participant, how much would you charge them?
Wait, sorry, repeat.
Okay, so what's your margin that you put on the cost per participant? So let's say that your cost per participant is, let's say, $700. How much would you charge them?
It's a weird question for retreats specifically because of the fact that the way I see the profit of my retreats, it's like after X person is when the profit starts. Because of the fact, if the 18-person castle is $6,000, it doesn't really matter if there's only 2 people that show up. You're not making per person. So I just never do it per person. Mm-hmm. Because for me, it's like after the 7th person, then all my expenses are paid. Because even with like when you rent a van for a retreat, whether you have the 10 or the 13 or the 15, it's still the same cost for the van or the accommodation. And the little stuff, like yes, breakfast will be more expensive for an extra person, but a lot of the time breakfast is like $3. So I don't even like equate to that. So for me, it's just after a specific person, I start making money.
Yeah.
So, and it just ranges too much to even like tell you.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And I think there is also another question that's very related to what you just said, is that, for example, when you book the accommodation, are you paying upfront from your own pocket? Or is there any kind of like refund or cancellation policy that you have in place for people? Because obviously that's going to impact that how much you are going to charge them or how much money you are going to make on that retreat.
Yeah, I mean, I would personally never cancel a retreat. So if one person signs up, it's happening. Like the person is trusting me to put something on and investing in myself and also buying flights to get to me. So no matter what, I just make the decision to put the deposit or, pay up front of the house. And that is like my number one motivator to start selling, because so yes, I use my own money. Once I put my own money down, I'm like, okay, this is going to happen. And once that first person signs up, like there's nothing stopping me. I will just continue.
Okay.
But yeah, I use my own money. I like to keep it within myself. Obviously, if you don't have enough money to start, like for example, in Mexico, my first ever, when I didn't even have money to pay for a hostel dorm, I did ask, hey, can I just give you like this portion now, and the day that I move in, I'll give you the rest? And they said yes, just asking.
Yeah. And what about the cancellation policy for the participants? So let's say that somebody says that they are going to join, but they decide to cancel. What kind of refund policy do you have in place for that, if there is any?
Yeah, that's a good question. My refund policy has changed throughout the past 3 years, but now what I think works for me is as long as they let me know a month before the trip, that credit, the amount of money they have paid for the retreat, will just slide over to another retreat, because I do like 5 a year. But something that has really helped me, because this is actually really common that people say they're coming and then they don't, because life happens, jobs, things happen, whatever. I used to do a deposit, so people don't have to pay me in full ever. They could just pay. I usually have like a 3 set deal, so they could do deposit at 500, then a month later 500, and again 500 before the retreat starts. I used to do my deposit $50. Terrible idea, because so many people will give you $50 and tell you they're gonna come, but then when they look up prices and then they get scared and then all this stuff happens and they end up not coming and not even telling you, because $50 isn't enough in their head to care. So I started doing $500. You could start with something lower, like 200 or 300, but I just feel like the higher the deposit is, the more chances they're gonna continue, or like they're just more serious about coming.
Yeah, like they are definitely going to be more committed.
Yeah.
Just to go back to one of the previous questions about your profit margin, so that's clear that you are going to start making money after, let's say, you sold out like 6 tickets to your retreat. But let's say that you have done your budget, like you know how much it's going to cost per person from your pocket, and let's say that the associated costs per participant are going to come out around like $500. Mm-hmm. Like how much do you usually like mark up the price?
Okay, I have to do some math in my head. Making 10,000, maybe like around $500. Yeah, I would say. And it just depends. Like all my retreats are super, super different.
Mm-hmm. How do you know how much to charge?
Yeah, this is kind of like what's on the screen right now, but I look at my audience and what they could usually afford. I check in with myself and ask myself what I think is fair and what I would pay for my own value that I could give and the experience that I have in the industry, and looking through my competitors. And
Okay.
Demand also, obviously. If you have really high demand, you could put your price up. If your demand isn't too high, don't start super, super high, because at the end of the day, you just want to start so you could start learning and getting into the industry. So.
Awesome. There's a couple of more questions. They are more practical and process-oriented. We can just get to them at the end.
Okay. Okay, so the next topic is teams. This is in retreats, but also just with like having this type of industry or business in this industry. Equals and support. So by that, I mean, have friends that do what you do. Because a lot of the time you will need advice or just need someone to look at something from a different perspective. And at the beginning, I had 0 friends that did what I did, and it was really hard to even just vent to people. So now I have found it super, super important to have friends in the same field that you are in. Equals and then support, that goes into mentorship. Never be afraid to invest in yourself. It's so, so important. And for example, I used to think, paying a mentor $1,000 was like the craziest thing ever. But now that I look back, I would honestly, like genuinely pay any amount of money to have someone tell me all their secrets of 13 retreats versus starting from A. Like it's taken me 3 years to get here. So just don't be afraid to invest in people's expertise because it can save you so much time and energy. And it can save you from a lot of mistakes that I've made, which has made me learn. Assistants and volunteers. During my retreats, it is super, super important, and I've learned this the hard way, to always have an assistant. And sometimes it's hard because I don't want to lose the profit of one full person, especially when I talk about that my profit sometimes starts at like the 8th person. So, if there's only 13 coming, only 5 of them are giving me profit, losing one to have an assistant like hurts my heart because it's like $1,500. But it's so important because during the retreat, you just never know what can happen. Like if a girl breaks her foot and you need to go to the hospital and, someone needs to continue that day, or the assistant would go to the hospital. This is like stuff that has happened to me. Or just if you need the night off because you are literally so drained and the only way you're going to be able to have energy to host all day the next day is to just take the night off. Like your assistant can help you in taking them to dinner or whatnot. So assistance is so important. And also what I have found just mentally, it has been super helpful to have someone to talk about and vent to at the end of the day about random things, even ask for advice, like how is it going? Like, have you seen the girls? Are they having fun? Is there any feedback? Just having someone to talk about it, because being alone in the game is just, it's not that great. It's always great to have people supporting and assisting you. And I've never paid for someone to assist me. I usually have volunteers, so they come for free and experience everything for free. But if I need some little tasks made or done, they help me. So that's super helpful. And then obviously you can have people come in for facilitators to facilitate specific ceremonies or specific workshops, yoga instructors, speakers, photographers. A good idea is if you're gonna start hosting retreats in the same place. So I've hosted 4 here. I've had the same type of people come on and on again to my retreat. So it's good to build that relationship. So I'll always have the same yoga instructors. I already liked them my first time. I'm gonna continue liking them. It's kind of like having a little, how would I say this? Like a little a little phone book per country of your favorite yoga instructors, your favorite drivers, your favorite speakers and photographers, and you can just use them for all your retreats, that you do in Bali. Or then you have another little phone book for your Colombia retreats, another one for Mexico. So it's always good to build those relationships and friendships with people who can help you during your retreats. Are there any questions about this specifically?
No. Oh, he has.
About yoga instructor and photographer and so on, you pay them local prices, or they're also foreigners, or how much money do you have to give to them?
Yeah, honestly, it depends. I obviously don't want to get charged too much, but I also know that they're bringing so much value. And to me, for example, a yoga class, for example, someone could charge me $200 because there's 20 people. But that essentially, I'm only losing $10 per person of profit. That's nothing because they're paying me $1,500. I could decide, yes, I'm gonna pay them because they're local and it feels like I want to help them. But I also could be $200 for an hour. That seems like a lot. I can genuinely get cheaper. So I pick and choose, and it's if I value them enough, if they are just my favorite yoga teacher and they're so good and I can afford to do it, cool. If I had a hard time selling this retreat and my profit margin isn't that high, I'm gonna go for the lower. It's just kind of what gets presented to me, and I just kind of choose with the budget I have in that moment.
Cool. And that also means you don't do all the workshops and so on yourself, but you get people in from outside for yoga teaching, for meditation?
Yeah, correct. So when I started, I did everything myself. So the yoga class, this and that, and then I realized it's actually so much work, it's too much work, that I way rather pay someone to do the yoga class, and then I get to also get the benefits of the yoga class, which I very much need when I'm hosting a retreat. So I've learned that it's okay to have people come in and do it, even if I can do it myself. I rather, $10 per person, that's fine. Or some people just charge $30 a yoga class. That is nothing to lose, and I can even maybe sleep an extra hour, which is very much needed during a retreat. So yeah, I pick and choose. Some stuff I know I want to do, but some stuff I'll just give it to someone else to do.
Cool. Thanks.
Okay. So I think this is one of the last slides, but these are just my little tools in my toolbox that I have as a retreat facilitator and organizer. The first thing is the gold. It is simply just self-care, like your personal self-care. You cannot take care of people if you're not taking care of yourself. Like, it is so important. Even during your retreat, that's like the one time that you're probably so busy and have so much on your mind that the last thing you want to do is like journal for 30 minutes and meditate and do this and that. But it's the time that is the most essential for you to do it. So yeah, if your dream is to be a facilitator, to be able to hold space for multiple people and energy and sustainably be able to do this at all times for years on end, you need to put yourself first, like at all times, going through a lot of healing and trauma, because as a facilitator, you will trigger so many people just because you are in the spotlight, and people get triggered from their own personal traumas. As well as you will get triggered a lot. I have gotten triggered millions of times by people who have said things to me during my retreats, customers that they're customers, they're not a friend, so you can't just be like, boundaries, like, I'm not gonna be your friend anymore. No, they paid you $1,500. So yeah, it's so important to look inwards and get that stuff done, not before you start hosting, but just really prioritize that and continue to prioritize that forever, if this is the space that you want to be in. And you also learn so much from your own triggers and traumas that you could, teach. My second tool is public speaking. I have taken some public speaking classes. I find that super, super important. And that could just be very simple stuff like storytelling. I took a storytelling class. I think that was super helpful. I've seen the difference in when someone starts something with a story versus not starting with the story, like having an actual emotional impact, bringing someone to another place, it makes a huge difference. So really bringing that tool into your retreat can completely up level. Using 4 quadrants. So this is just on this public speaking, but when you are speaking or hosting a ceremony or a yoga class or just simply introducing yourself when all your retreat guests arrive, like using the 4 quadrant method, making sure you're giving eye contact to like 1 quadrant, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, to everyone so no one feels excluded. I probably didn't do it too well right now, but that's because there's a camera and then people out here too, but that's super important. Rhythmic cadence is just like not saying too many words at once, just like 4 words at a time, 4 to 5 words, beat 4 to 5 words. Make sure people are understanding and you're not overwhelming them with too much info. And then just practice your public speaking. So whenever someone like asks if I want to do a podcast or I want to do this interview or I want to do a workshop, it's always yes, even if I don't feel prepared, because for me, it's just practice for what I do. And there's nothing to lose, so. And then the last one is overcoming challenges. Retreat facilitating is not an easy job. You may think that, oh wow, in a week, $10,000, that's incredible. Like, that's so easy. No, it's not. It's so freaking hard. There is so many different things that can happen. There's so much liability and responsibility when you go into this industry, but it is so incredible and transformative and rewarding, so it's amazing. But some of the challenges that I can talk about really quickly is, I'll talk about compassion fatigue is a thing that you most likely will if you start hosting a lot of people. Is a thing that happens to me is like, I get way too tired to care for what people's problems, and it's just the reality of it. If you continue to be presented, like at this point I've hosted about 130 people. I host around 70 people in a year. It's new friendships, new people telling me like what their triggers or traumas are. Sometimes I get compassion fatigue, and I think that's just a thing to know that A, it's normal, but B, that's your time to realize that you need a break and you need to chill for a moment. But it is normal to get that. The law of the disruptor, I learned this from a medium, so like a very spiritual teacher in Ubud. But when she talked about that, it changed the game for me, because I have had one person disrupt a group on and on again in my retreats, and I always wondered what it was. And she talked about that in the universal law. When there are big groups, there will always be someone that is there to trigger people. So you can believe in this or you don't have to, but if you happen to start hosting and notice that there's always one person triggering you or triggering people or disrupting it, just know it's normal and you didn't just like attract them because you're not meant to do this. It's part of the process. You end up learning from that disruptor and so do other people. And then, yeah, continuously learning. You're gonna, I have gotten new challenges every single retreat I've ever hosted. I do not stop. It's like a forever learning curve. And I've even talked to people that have been hosting experiences for like 40 years. You will never stop learning because new people will always come, new type of triggers, traumas, new type of personalities. You can't be ready for it all, but it's okay. You're just gonna learn and continue going. Yeah, I think that's, yeah, question.
Okay, it's on the pricing spectrum, let's say. So do you justify the prices to your customers, or like in your landing page, do you break down why is it, I mean, expensive, but like quotations, expensive? Or like if someone is like, oh, but I would love to come, but like it's so expensive, blah, blah, blah. It's like, how do you kind of like go through the whole high ticket, let's say, questions that you might be getting?
Yeah, well, first of all, the most important thing is that you believe that you're valued at that, because if you don't believe it, then you can't sell it. But yes, all the time. So when I started doing my retreats, they were not retreats, they were adventure trips. So my competitors are doing I have many competitors, so there are influencers who host their travel like followers on these trips around Bali or whatever destination. Those retreats are usually anywhere from like $800 to $1,200 for like 10 to 2 weeks. And then mine are like 7 days for $1,500. That's a huge difference. And people could see those as my competitors. So yes, this is a question. Like this is completely a thing. People are like, why are yours so expensive? My reason, I just genuinely tell them the reason. So I will be like, well, my competitors or some of my competitors, when they're hosting something in Costa Rica, you guys they're all sleeping in hostels. Mine is different. We don't sleep in hostels. We sleep in luxurious villas. That's one of them. 2, like it's the experience, or this isn't just adventure. I add the value of, we will be going through a lot of like workshops of wisdom and knowledge of years. One thing that I do is I bring in a lot of people. Like for me, it's so fun to be in Bali because I bring in a lot of really cool teachers to teach really random, knowledgeable things, and that stuff. A lot of people will charge me sometimes thousands of dollars to come and teach a day's workshop. That's a huge expense, and that's a huge expense for a reason. So depending on the retreat, I just sell it. So for example, my France one, I'm paying someone $5,000 to come and teach 20 hours of wisdom on the divine feminine. So yes, when people are asking me certain questions, I tell them this wisdom, the reason I hired this girl and the reason this is an expensive retreat is because when I went to this woman's retreat, I had never felt so powerful in my freaking life. It was the most unique wisdom and knowledge that I have ever learned, and without that, I wouldn't be in a lot of places that I am now. So I'm just selling it genuinely. Like, I believe that it's worth that. So.
Okay.
Yes, we have a bunch of questions to
Okay.
go through very quick.
Perfect.
I'm going to.
I have to pee, so like 3 more questions.
How many?
3.
3.
Well, we could do more, but depending on the time.
Okay.
Sorry.
Maybe this one. What about insurance? Like, do you have a special insurance for this type of businesses? Is there any kind of company that you would recommend?
Yeah, so when it comes to legality, I can't give too much advice because it just completely depends where you are registered as a business. I'm registered in Colombia, so if you're an American, if you're European, I can give 2 things. A, I know that a lot of people who are in this specific industry register their businesses in either Dubai or Panama for such reasons that benefit this specific like retreat hosting industry when it comes to finances. And B, one thing that I like to do is no one is allowed to come on my retreat unless they have paid for their own travel insurance. So I send links of my favorite travel insurances and I just tell them, $40 is so worth it, I promise you, when you can get your, I don't say you get your phone stolen. I say you might lose your phone, you might leave it out, and now your insurance will pay for it. And I tell them the truth. Like one girl last retreat, she knocked her little toe into a taxi driver's back seat, and she spent all night in the hospital, and it was $10,000, and all her insurance gave her all the money back. Like it's just natural. So I have every single person has to come with their own travel insurance, and they just have to send me an email with it. And in the case that I do end up at a hospital or something, I already have the email of what their travel insurance is, and obviously as well as like their parents and medical guardians and all that stuff.
What kind of other form of marketing do you do outside of TikTok, and how much time in advance you start actually promoting the event? So you said that you try to book the accommodation as soon as possible, ideally a year before the retreat happens. How much time do you think people must spend on marketing?
Honestly, that could just completely range like so differently depending on everything. If you already have an influence and an audience, it might take way less time than if you don't. It also completely depends on, what your niche is, what your audience is. If your audience is 50-year-old men, it's going to be very different than someone who spends a 20-year-old girl who spends so much of their time on TikTok. And so it just depends on like the avenue that you take. But that's something that you have to go through and like really ask your audience, like about your audience. So put yourself in their shoes and be like, if I was a 9-to-5 worker in my 30s in New York City, how much time would I need before signing up for a retreat in Bali? Like how much time do I need to ask my work if I can have the 10 days off plus the 4 days of travel? How much money? Like you just have to ask yourself that stuff and kind of come up with it depending on your audience. You just want to see your audience's needs. And you can even do polls on your story, even if you're not famous, even if you don't have that many followers, but just genuine polls like, hey guys, I might be hosting a retreat. Like how far in advance would you want to go? 3 or 6 months or a year? Just ask, use your resources, ask the people around you.
Then one last question. So you also help other people who want to run their retreats. You help them to figure out how to do it. What is the most common excuse that you hear from these people? What is it that usually stopping people from hosting their first retreat?
I'm just going to say it's fear. They just don't know how to do it. So they just don't do it. I think that's the number one thing, and that's completely fine and understandable, and that's why like being prepared helps so much. Take a lot of those fears away.
Okay, cool. I think we can wrap it up here. Not going to change the camera, but I think I can speak on everybody's behalf that this was super helpful, super practical, and like also the chat agrees. Yeah, so very well done. Thank you so much for everyone joining here offline and also you guys attending online as well. We are going to do more of this stuff. If you guys have any kind of recommendation whatsoever, what kind of topics you would like us to cover, please just drop it in the chat, reach out to us, book a coaching and a consultation with Gabby. You can just scan the QR code. I'm also going to quickly drop the link there, and I'm going to share that with you later on as well. I think that's a wrap. Thank you so much. This was awesome.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. Bye.